Hi, this is MarqueeCReW,
and Esther B47.
and today I would like to demonstrate with Esther the creation of a CREW macro from Alteryx. In the Alteryx Gallery, Alteryx has now created their own runner macro.
So if you're not familiar with the runner macro, it runs workflows for you without needing to open that workflow.
And if we go to the gallery.alteryx.com and come to districts, we can look at Alteryx product district. So if you're in an organization that only wants official Alteryx products, this is an official Alteryx product, and there is a runner macro right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that, and I can download that. It'll be several times I've downloaded it, but say OK, and I can double click on that.
And that's going to unzip and open it right into Alteryx.
And maybe it'll do that twice for me.
Perhaps.
Now on the import, it will say that you've got an error. Do you want to load it anyway? Yes. The error that's here is that it's looking for this out.txt temp thing. Don't worry about it. And what I would do is I would take this CREW runner macro and I would save it to your macro directory where you've got other macros, maybe CREW macros stored already. And once you do that, in another workflow, if I right click, and you'll only be able to do this if you right click it, I can insert and scroll down, and I will find macro, and there it is, the runner macro. This macro will allow you to then use a directory search, find a macro that exists on your system, and I've got a lot of them in Alteryx Challenges, and I'm going to go and take this first one, Solve CREW, and I'm going to Control-Shift Browse. I'm going to run it. I don't know if it's going to succeed or fail. Hopefully it succeeds because it's got my name on it.
We'll see the S and the F. Succeed as if something comes out successfully. F as if something fails.
And this macro is remarkably similar to the runner macro in CREW. We take a look at the Alteryx macro next, and it's essentially the same as this runner macro, and it'll do the same type of functionality. But what if you had more than one macro to run, or one workflow to run? Well, CREW provides you with the ability to have a list runner, which for a list runner, I would be able to, pardon me, I'm moving some things around on my view here. I would be able to find a directory or list of workflows. I want to run workflow 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, what I'm going to do is have a directory. And I'm going to say that I want to go to the directory. I want to find those same not so easy when you're doing this without a mouse.
So what's nice about this is it runs multiple workflows, one after the other. So if you ever build Alteryx in a more modular way, where you have one workflow that processes a certain amount of data, and then another workflow that takes that data from the first workflow and processes that, and so on, to get them all to run one after the other, in native Alteryx, you had to use chained apps, which was not always the most convenient way to work. So the list runner lets you bring in a list of files without using a chained app, and it just runs file 1, file 2, file 3, file 4, whatever order they are alphabetically in your directory.
So here I'm going to say I want this to run 3 macros or 13 macros.
One or the other, close enough.
And run. And I can stop if a module fails or not fails. Now that functionality I'm not going to show you immediately how to build in, but instead of saying I want to run everything in this directory in this case, I'm going to show you how to take this one macro, copy it, and paste it into a new workflow. And I'm going to turn this into a macro. I'm going to use a global search here, and I'm going to look for a control parameter.
So by adding interface tools to your workflow, you're automatically turning something into either a macro or an analytic app.
And so if I take a look here,
Ooh,
because
yay.
it's a control parameter, it turns it into a batch macro. Now, watch very carefully what I do here.
The magic
Is I connect these two, the question to the action, and I get this action, this lightning bolt connection caused an action tool to show up. And what I want to do is I want to effectively change that statement that's inside of the macro. What I'm going to do, trick, is just delete all of that stuff that's in there. That way, if I ever give this macro to somebody else, they're not going to be stuck with an error message saying, where's this file? I'm going to take this tool, and if I right-click on it, I could insert after and insert after. But what I really want to do is I want to go and have a macro input and macro
Two macro
output.
outputs. Yeah. So if you want your macro to spit information back into your workflow, you need these output tools.
Okay, so if we remember back to the workflow here, this is going to have one input and one output. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to have one input and two outputs. I'm going to have the successes coming out here and the failures coming out here. And so to be able to go and use this macro, there are a few things to do to tidy it up. I changed the grouping and I changed the logo, and I put an anchor abbreviation here of an F for failure and change the output name, and output anchor here is S. I'm going to file, save, and I'm going to just call this $test2.yxmc. It's now a macro that, like the other macros that I did the insert trick with, I will right-click, insert, scroll down, find the macros, and there's test2.
Oops.
No problems. Right-click, delete,
connector.
and connect around. This macro, choose the control parameter. I can change that to saying something a little bit more user-friendly, and full path. And now I can right-click or Control-Shift-Browse, and I'll get rid of this other macro that's contained in it, and Control-R and run.
So this lets you have your list runner macro while still using all of the Alteryx tools.
Yeah, so I can set this to run up. My computer, I need to run these 20 jobs, and while I'm doing that, run to Starbucks or what have you. Or I could put this on the server, and if I run this on the server, it will run on the server. If you run it on the server and you haven't saved the macro to the server, then you would have to package the workflow and include the runner macro that you created, test1, and the runner macro inside of that. And now it can run on the server. Caveat, the administrator is going to see you running one workflow. Your friends, your colleagues are going to wait their turn while you're running 20 jobs. You might not be everybody's favorite when you start running these long-running workflows. Or if the server administrator says the maximum length of a job is 1 hour and your Starbucks trip takes you 2 hours, then your job might end if there's a maximum time limit for a single workflow. But you can run 10, 20, any number of workflows in succession. If you have all of your testing workflows,
Right.
you can put them together. If you've got workflows that are like unload, transform, load,
You can run them one after the other. Just if you're using Gallery, be a good citizen in your gallery.
Yeah.
And make sure others are aware that you need to use the gallery.
So this ran my 3 workflows for me. I can see the results of the workflows.
All success.
All successful. And really it was just, if you've never built a batch macro, if you find yourself doing something repetitively, like trying to type in the name of the workflow to put
One
into a
after
run
the
after
other.
one after the next, this is the solution for you.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
All right.
thank you for joining me.
Thanks,
Cheers.
everyone. Cheers.